All right, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Brent from the partner engineering team. He's going to talk about Lightship Maps.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. Okay. So you might have heard just now from Phil, who just said we're going to talk about Lightship Maps for Unity today. If you were here in the previous talk, Mike Romero's talk about Ingress, he also gave us some really cool insight into Lightship Maps, but you're going to find out a little bit more as well. Am I good? Cool. All right. Yeah, so Lightship Maps, I lovingly call it your solution for digital cartography. I'm Brent, as Phil mentioned, senior partner engineer here, and I actually work directly with the Maps team on the maps, on Lightship Maps for Unity. So if you have any questions after the fact or during, whatever, feel free to ask me and I'm happy to answer. So I'll first talk about what is Lightship Maps. Like Mike mentioned, it is the same map that's seen in Ingress, Pokemon Go, Pikmin Bloom, and our new title, NBA All World. It's the real-world map that is derived from OSM data that we package up and put straight into our games. So that same technology is what we want to share with our Lightship developers. Oh, okay, there we go. So a really quick overview is it's a client-side SDK, so it's just a Unity package. You don't need to worry about server configuration or anything like that. All you need is your Lightship API key, the Unity package, and you got Lightship Maps working. So it renders world maps. Really, it's a huge data set. So it's a set of land use, roads, buildings, a bunch of stuff like that. But what we provide in the package is builders that actually generate the buildings that you see here and the roads and the parks. I'll talk about it a little bit more in a bit, but you can actually use that data however you want to render the map in really creative ways. It's also compatible with ARDK and VPS. I have an example of that later, but it kind of plays perfectly well with our VPS coverage API. So what sets Lightship Maps apart from like other Maps SDKs? Well, first and foremost is we're really focusing on optimization. So not only are we building with AR experiences in mind, like working with ARDK and VPS, but this is, like I said, literally the tech that's used in our Niantic games. It's battle tested, and any improvements that our Niantic games get, as they give us feedback, you're going to see in a couple months after the fact when we release it publicly. Customization is probably my favorite thing about it. So not only can you adjust color palettes really quickly using our theme system, you have a bunch of zoom levels that you can work with and a ton of rendering options. And we're also working to support a universal render pipeline as well. And the goal of Lightship as well is to really be your one-stop shop for map-based AR experiences. So if you are dealing with anything, making an app or a game that deals with the real world, we want Lightship to be where you look for your SDKs. It's also really, really easy to use. Not only is it just downloading a UPM package, which is like a few clicks here and there, but once you have that UPM package downloaded, it's maybe like 3 clicks to get a working Lightship map prefab into your scene, press play, and it just works. So let's talk about some key features that makes Lightship Maps particularly awesome. So zoomable tiles are really the bread and butter of Lightship Maps. So it lets you see anywhere from higher zoom levels, which is zooming down all the way to the street view. Gives you a lot of detail, lets you look at buildings, roads, rendering just a lot of details. And then you can zoom to the lower zoom levels, which is the world view. So you can see more of the world, but there's less detail. And it doesn't actually keep the meshes that are rendered at the smaller ones at the closer zoom levels when you zoom out, so you don't have to worry about like memory getting hogged up or anything like that. Another nice thing is that the zoom mechanic, it doesn't mess with the Unity camera at all. So you can do whatever you want with the Unity camera. We kind of do some math magic to make the tiles appear as they're growing and shrinking, but really everything's staying in the same spot. So talking about custom builders, something that Mike Romero also mentioned in the last talk is just how crazy customizable these maps are. So here are some examples of color palette swaps, and these are all in real time in Editor, swapping using our theme system. So not only can you see the palette swaps, but the building heights are also changing, and you can see features that are being procedurally added to, for example, parks, or have like Christmas trees in the background and things like that. So using the data that defines the features like roads and buildings, you can say, I want a Christmas tree in every park, or I want every building to have like a cool tower or a portal and ingress or something like that. And you can also apply shaders to the map features to make them fit the aesthetic of your game. So really what we're going for here is giving you a really easy way to empower you to render and display the map to your liking, to the best way that fits your game and gives your users the coolest experience. One thing that's particularly important to me, I think, is performance. And not only just performance, but making sure that there's a nice balance between how performant something is and how easy it is to like implement and use. So for more simple cases, we have our standard map builders. They're a little less performant than, for example, our asynchronous job system, but they are really easy to use, really easy to set up, and our different builder types mix and match. So for even more performance, we have some Unity job system-based builders. They're really complicated, to be frank, but they really squeeze out like every frame you can get. And like I said, you can mix and match these depending on what your needs are. So if you have a lot of detail that you want to go into, say, buildings, for example, you can use the Unity job system on just the buildings, make sure those are rendered really, really quickly, and everything else, you don't need the overhead of the Unity job system, so you could just use our standard builders. To add on to performance is tile caching. So the way that Lightship Maps works is it fetches some data from our servers and gives it back to you. That network call takes time, it's latency. So we want to prevent like repeat network calls from happening. So what we do is we cache the tile data ahead of time. So if you go back to a tile that you've already been on, let's say you like walked forward like 500 feet and then you walk back, that tile that you were just at, you don't need to do another network call for it to get rebuilt. The data's already on hand and it gets rebuilt really quickly. From the more gamey side of things, object placement is a really cool feature that we have. So you can place Unity game objects in the scene, either dynamically based on the procedural data from the map tiles, or just like have player input to add things. And that object will stay in its real-world geographical location on the map. Lightship Maps for Unity will persist that location, so when you get back to that physical space in the real world, that object will still be there. I think that's like a really, really good use case for combining with VPS in particular, or really just any sort of like thing you want to add to the map. Like I mentioned before, ARDK and VPS, great integration here. So this is our maps, our Lightship Maps SDK, using in conjunction with the VPS coverage API. So these are all the VPS wayspots within a particular region. And they're all placed, again, like dynamically. So until recently, we had our private beta. We had a bunch of developers who got to use the early version of Lightship Maps. And the reason I want to talk about this now is because really their feedback is incredibly important to us. We take that feedback to heart, and we really use that to figure out what we want to see on our roadmap so that we can give you guys the best development experience possible. So here are just some things people said. They really like performance and customization and stuff like that. Always great to hear really positive things from our developers. Okay. So speaking of the beta, what's coming up next is actually our Lightship Maps public beta. So we want to see Lightship Maps in the hands of developers like you. Pretty much any Lightship developer with an API key can we'll be able to use Lightship Maps pretty soon. And we want to take all the feedback that you guys give us then to incorporate that into our final release, or final V1 release, when you guys see it, so that when Lightship Maps is publicly released, it'll have the coolest features, the best features that everybody's asking for. So things like better performance, using Unity Job System, that's actually something that I'm actively working on currently. Customization through theming, which is something that my colleague Mar, who spoke yesterday at the same Lightship Maps talk, is working on. A bunch of different sample scenes for different use cases. Those scenes are really just to get you started, give you starting points, see what the possibilities are for Lightship Maps. And like I mentioned before, support for Unity's universal render pipeline, and hopefully other rendering pipelines in the future. So yeah, if you want to hear more, please follow our socials and keep an eye on the developer site at lightship.dev. Find out more about the public. Wow, that took a really long time to load. Keep an eye on the dev site at lightship.dev. And okay, well, the next slide is supposed to say questions and have QR codes. I'll get that running up. But yeah, that's all I got for you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now, or I'll be around pretty much all day. So.
You guys have